Welcome to today's webinar, The OTA Advantage with GetYourGuide. We're so excited for today's session, and we have some really interesting insights to share with you all. I also want to extend a very warm Bókun welcome to Ollie. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, before we get started, I just wanted to take a second to introduce myself. I'm Maya. I'm the Senior Partner Marketing Specialist at Bókun, and I've been with Bókun for about 5 months now, and I'm responsible for growing our partnerships with our main OTA and reseller partners, like GetYourGuide, one of our most important partners. So one of the things that makes Bókun so special is the ability to connect with 2,600 plus worldwide OTAs and resellers in the Bókun marketplace, as you know. But what you may not realize is that we actually have partnerships with many, if not all, of those OTAs and resellers, and we are constantly working to grow our strategic partnerships through collaborating on campaigns, attending events, sitting on panels, co-creating content like blogs, social media, LinkedIn, and developing our API connections, all to ensure that you get the most out of your connection and have the best experience. So that brings me to introduce what we are here to talk about today. So we have collaborated with GetYourGuide as a research partner along with Ventrata and Fair Harbor to help debunk one of the biggest myths about OTAs, and that is that they cannibalize and take away from your direct bookings. And at Bókun, we know that this is a very common belief from small and mid-sized suppliers, and also prevents suppliers from selling with OTAs like GetYourGuide. And we totally understand those concerns, especially when it comes to costs. So with that being said, we are so grateful that GetYourGuide has set out on this journey to do this research and to prove otherwise. Now, before I pass it over to Ollie from GetYourGuide, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. So following Ollie's presentation, we're going to have a brief fireside chat where we will get into some actionable takeaways. We also have our amazing support lead, Sukanya, on the meeting today. She will be monitoring the Q&A and answering some questions. If you do have questions about the content today, please pop them in the Q&A. We will try to address them within the presentation, or we will be following up with you after. We'll also be sharing the recording after the session, so do not worry if you need to step out. You can always catch up later. So one last thing from me. For those who don't know who Bókun is, we are the all-in-one booking management solution built to help tour and activity operators stay organized and get more bookings. With Bókun, operators can grow direct bookings, connect to thousands of OTAs and resellers in the marketplace, and improve operational efficiencies like avoiding double bookings, increasing and managing availability, automating tasks, and so much more. So in a nutshell, we essentially power the experiences industry by driving bookings, connecting the industry, and optimizing businesses. All right, so let's begin. I'm so happy to introduce Ollie, our Senior Supply Marketing Manager from GetYourGuide, who's here to unpack this research study with us today and talk all about the OTA advantage.
It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Senior Supply Marketing Manager at GetYourGuide. Thank you so much for having me. I will make sure I'm sharing the right screen here.
Looks good.
Okay. Yeah, once again, thank you so much, Maya and Bókun, for having us and for all your contributions to this research so far. I'll start with just a couple of words for anyone on the call that might not have heard of GetYourGuide or might not really know what we're about or what we do. So GetYourGuide's an online travel agency, an OTA, and our purpose is to help you to reach millions of high-value travelers. And these are travelers that we work hard to build trust with and to connect with the right experiences. We have over 150,000 experiences on the platform in 150 countries, which can leave you thinking, where does my experience fit in this? The flip side of that is we have 100 million site visitors per month, and we sell 200 million We've sold, sorry, 200 million tickets. So we really are there to connect travelers with the right experience, and we think that's you. We work in 37 currencies and with 37 different languages. So really trying to provide a level of scale that can be challenging for individual operators. But let's get into the good stuff. Let's get into the fun stuff that we're all here for. So today, our latest travel experience trend tracker report, another mouthful, which we just launched so 3 or 4 weeks ago. And TET, as we call it, so that we don't die from saying travel experiences trend tracker 1,000 times. TET is a biannual research that we put out for our supply partners, so for you, for operators, for business owners. And unlike a lot of other research reports, we don't include insights on hotels, on flights. Our research centers on experiences and the experiences industry. And we tend to really dive deep on a specific topic rather than trying to say general things about the whole travel industry. We change the topic each year, wave after wave, and that's so that we can help you build a nuanced but deep view of your customers and the industry that you live in. So the last wave, the last one of these version of this that we did was around customer reviews. So how people decide what activities to do, how people decide where to go, and what influence customer reviews has on these decisions. But this topic that we're talking about today, I'd say is a very ambitious one. And it deals with, as Maya said, a topic that we're all thinking about quite often. And there's always this word, this word that people dance around when we're talking to our supply partners, and that's, no surprise, cannibalization. I think likely most people tuned in know or believe that there's a widespread suspicion that OTAs directly take bookings from the direct channel of operators, attractions, and suppliers. And so typically for us, we approach this in the opposite way. We think about our business in how do we drive incremental bookings for you and make sure that we're a business add, not something that's taking away. And that's particularly important for us with direct channels because this wouldn't be good for either of us if we were cannibalizing. And we know that this direct booking channel is really, really center stage for many operators because you've told us. Arrival's 2024 Global Operator Landscape Survey said that for 7 out of 10 operators, it is your top priority. And we typically both hoped and genuinely believed for years that GetYourGuide did not, in fact, cannibalize these direct bookings, that we actually bring incremental customers. And you'll see in about 15 slides time, a little more meat on the bone of why, of how we're maybe different in how we operate to what you're doing in the spaces of how we market and who we market to. So we set out to answer that question essentially. Do OTAs like GetYourGuide bring you different incremental business, or do they eat into your direct bookings? And the research that we're going to dive into today is, as far as we know, some of the most in-depth of this type of research for the experiences industry. And if you know of any other in-depth research on this topic specifically, please reach out to us. We'd love to know. A little bit of background. First up, what inspired us to look at this and understand the effects that are at play in this direct versus OTA bookings dynamic. So we were inspired by this Cornell University study that came in the very early days of hotels online. And it essentially took some hotels, monitored bookings via Expedia and bookings via direct, took them offline for a bit in a blackout period, and then monitored what happened to their direct bookings when they were no longer listed on the OTAs. And what they found here was a phenomenon known as the billboard effect. A lot of you would have heard of this already. And this billboard effect is really widely cited in our industry and sort of in marketing as a whole. Interesting fact though, take a guess how many hotels were involved in this much cited study. It's 4 hotels, 4. But we kind of knew that if we jumped in front of hundreds of supply partners, if we even tried to work with our partners like Bókun, said, we want to look at 4 partners to make a case to show some evidence against this assumption around cannibalization, we would get laughed out of the room, and I think we would deserve it, honestly. And also the context has changed a bit. It's almost impossible to find operators and attractions who don't partner with any OTA, let alone enough for this study. So it makes it very difficult to replicate exactly how this study was done, not that we would want to. So we wanted to find another way, and we wanted to find a way that was around 60 times more robust. So what did we do? To collect data for this research, we worked with 3 of our connectivity partners, Bókun, FareHarbor, and then Strata. And we did this to collect data beyond the limits of our own bookings, because obviously the data that we have access to is only people who are listed on GetYourGuide. What we did is we looked at bookings and net revenue of the direct channel and the global OTAs for a set of supply partners in the 12 months before joining GetYourGuide. And then we looked at those direct bookings and net revenue and those OTA bookings and net revenue, obviously new bookings and net revenue in the 12 months after they joined GetYourGuide. And then we calculated the delta to see what the differences were, to compare and contrast and try to understand what was happening here. We did this for 238 suppliers across 4 continents, across multiple experience categories, and we looked at data for a period of 24 months, so that year before and the year after joining. For privacy reasons, all the distribution channels, of course, were totally anonymous, so we didn't know one partner from another. We couldn't get to that level of granularity, respecting, obviously, your data as supply partners. And the data was reviewed by an independent third-party partner. The rest of the presentation, now that we've got through some of the sort of, we've set the stage, we talked a bit about the methodology and why we approached it this way. Here's how we'll break it up. We'll talk about what the research actually says, what the results of the research are. Then we'll say why we think that is, what insights we think we can pull out of these numbers, of these results. And finally, and maybe most interestingly, what you can actually do about it. So what we recommend you consider doing as a result of this research that we think is really actionable and really interesting. First up, what did this research show? What did we find out? Revenue from all channels increased in the 12 months after supply partners joined GetYourGuide. Revenues from OTAs grew 73%. This makes sense, right? You added a new big OTA to your OTA channel bucket. Revenue went up in that channel. Checks out so far. But direct bookings also grew by a very healthy 16% on average. So a 16% year-on-year growth as an established business from a single owned channel is a pretty good result. And we wanted to know, like, how good would we get in front of you and you would say, no, we expect a lot more than that. And on an individual case, that might be so, but we actually know for a majority of operators in 2025, around a 10% net revenue growth was the goal versus the previous year. And this comes from that same arrival research that I talked about earlier. So that's actually the desired amount for most experienced creators. So even in this channel that many people would assume would go down, we saw a very healthy 16% average growth. And this added up to a 40% average overall revenue growth. So in the 12 months after listing on GetYourGuide, experienced businesses grew by 41% on average in the next 12 months. But what did this mean for ticket sales? Was this just a price impact? The same is true for ticket sales. Joined a new OTA, so ticket sales through that OTA channel grew very healthily as expected. But ticket sales from direct bookings grew as well. Again, a really healthy 18%, for an overall growth of 41% year on year for ticket sales. So this is a really positive story. It's a story of growth without sacrificing growth of a particular channel, with the assumption there potentially being that the direct channel would have gone down. And this is, of course, an average, right? Like, this isn't going to be the story of every single operator that joins an OTA. So I think we can be quite transparent and matter of fact about that. Not every single partner saw an increase in direct bookings. But I will say that even of the very few suppliers who saw a decrease in their direct bookings after they joined GetYourGuide, the average of that decrease amongst this sort of unlucky set was just 2%. So we're not looking at a distribution where there were some huge losers and some big winners, and it was a big difference between those two groups. It was a very modest direct booking softening, countered by a very healthy overall growth in net revenue, driven as expected by that effect of the OTA channel. And honestly, here, this is where we come up against the limits of the research. There's not a lot we can say about how they lost direct bookings. It could have been that they decided to fire their social media manager. It might have been a regional effect. We just don't know. And now you might well think, this doesn't reflect my experience, and that might be the case for you. But again, these are global averages across this whole large data set that we looked at. But we didn't cherry pick. Here's an example of a US leisure attraction. Here's an example of a UK bus tour, a guided walking tour in Thailand, a larger guided walking tour in the US. This really did reflect, when we looked on like a case study level, this really did reflect what we saw with most operators. And the point here again is that this is a story of growth, but the degree of growth changes based on a lot of different conditions, some of which I can run you through now, and some of which we just don't have visibility of. But what do we have visibility of? We can see that, as you would expect, there's a law of diminishing returns when adding new channels. When an operator, when a supply partner adds that first OTA, so 0 to 1 OTA, there's a very high level of growth that we see. And when you're moving from your 9th to your 10th OTA, that growth softens. No surprises here, I'd say. And the same is true here of supplier size. So very small operators who joined GetYourGuide, they saw a much bigger impact than very large operators. And this reflects what we assume, I think it's a reasonable assumption, that this reflects the complexity and the maturity of these businesses, and the fact that in all likelihood, these large operators are already working with a lot of channels. They already have quite a mature business. But again, this is a positive story where this, across different sizes of operators, we saw very healthy growth. So onto that second section that I mentioned, so insights. We've talked a bit about what the results, what the raw numbers were, but why do we actually think that is? And as you might expect, in an industry where we're selling things to customers who have a lot of different choices, it comes down to customer behavior. So first, let's start by looking at who travelers actually are. And we segment travelers by trip types, so attitudinally. And because different trip types have different booking behavior, that explains what we refer to as this billboard effect. If you find yourself in the next 2 or 3 slides thinking like, where is this going? Like, bear with me. there's a payoff, but getting into these traveler types is really important for explaining why we think we've seen these really interesting results. So free independent travelers, this bottom line that you can see on the slide, this is our largest cohort of travelers in the Western world. So 7 out of 10 travelers organized a trip as a free independent traveler in 2024. Don't worry if you see numbers that don't add up to 100%. Again, it's an attitudinal analysis of travelers, so people can fit into more than one of these categories at the same time. Importantly, some of these free independent travelers do more travel experiences than others, and we call these travelers explorers. And if you know Get Your Guide, if you've ever seen us on a stage at a webinar anywhere, you've probably heard us talking about explorers before, and I'm going to talk about them some more. Explorers are the most valuable free independent travelers, and they're responsible for the majority of experience spending. This is the strategic focus for us for Get Your Guide, and it's something that we also like to sort of educate our supply partners on to ensure it's transparent why. Explorers are the most valuable FITs, free independent travelers. They are travel crazy. And they're travel crazy because travel is really core to who they are. 92% of them go out of their way to do activities. And those activities are done on 7 trips per year, which is a lot more than the average traveler. And on those trips, they spend a lot more on experiences in the next year. And this sort of obsession with travel, this excitement about travel, is something that's reflected not only in their travel behavior, but in their planning and research behavior. Explorers use, on average, 12 resources to plan their trips. That's from price competitor websites to brochures to social media to travel agents. They really love this section or this stage of their travel journey, and it's important to them. 40% of these travelers use travel booking sites, and more than half of them use search engines. In fact, research actually suggests that explorers and sort of modern members of society in general see 6,000 to 10,000 ads per day across a huge range of touch points. Like, think about, I was talking to Maya in preparation for this talk, and we were talking about like even taking a train trip. You look out the window and you see ad touch point after ad touch point after ad touch point. And through all of these touch points, they're collecting information early. We also see this in our data, with 30% of our travelers connecting with Get Your Guide more than a month in advance. So reflecting this hunger for information and this overwhelming number and range of touch points. And they want to compare and think about things before they book. They visit us average 10 times before booking. And this isn't a bad thing. This is regular customer behavior. This is what you would expect someone who's excited and engaged with travel to do. As I mentioned before, I'm not lost. I haven't just gotten excited talking about our amazing explorers. The reason that explorers use multiple resources and many touch points for so long is that there's different parts of the decision-making progress. Hang in there, a couple more slides, and then it'll all make sense. So these explorers, we like to categorize as having a 3-stage decision-making process. Of course, in reality, it's not this linear with every single explorer, but it's a really useful taxonomy to understand the ecosystem of this booking behavior and booking planning. So we like to think of it as a sort of triple diamond. First up, a traveler picks where they should go. They collect a bunch of options and they choose one. Second up, they know where they're going and they're deciding what to do there. I've decided I'm going to Rome. I am a coffee addict, so I'll book a coffee tour, right? I haven't maybe gotten to the exact coffee tour, but I know the activity type that I want to do. That's our second stage. Then finally, once I've got that activity type, I go into specific products and I decide which product I'd like to choose and I book it. Make sense? Now, operators spend the majority of their marketing budgets and time and thinking on this product level. So once I've already decided that I'd like to do that coffee tour in Rome, how can I grab that customer? And that makes absolute sense. That's where you should be focusing as an operator business with a particular corner of the market. But that's not where GetYourGuide focuses. We focus along that whole journey. So whether that's someone with the question in their head, the best nature destinations in South America, whether that's someone with the question in their head, foodie experiences in Paris, or whether that's someone in their head, best Montmartre pub crawls. So across that entire journey and through 30 billion ads a year, this is where GetYourGuide plays. And we play across this journey on a huge range of different channels. We work with hundreds of brand partners, thousands of affiliates and creators, and this is how we pull people back again and again to see your activities so that you can show up in front of them at as many of those touch points as you can. And that's why the billboard effect exists. So we see this 6,000 to 10,000 ads a day. We don't act on all of them. They're not all actions that we take to purchase something, but they are moments for us to research, engage, learn, or be pulled in by a particular activity or message. So imagine you have a pretty great 5% conversion rate on your product page. So 5 out of every 100 people that come and look at that product page, they book your product. Awesome. But what's also important to consider is that 95 people of those 100 people, they didn't book, right? But they did see your experience and you've planted the seed in their minds of perhaps this is what I'm going to book. You're an option, you're a viable option, and maybe they'll book you elsewhere. This is what we like to describe as the invisible power of visibility. So what do you actually do about it? We've heard what the results are, what the numbers that came out of this research are. We've talked a little bit about the insights, why we think these results came out. But this data makes space for a bit of a reframe, an opportunity to re-examine some of your business under a new light. And we've made some recommendations of what you can consider doing, knowing there's a good chance that the billboard effect is having some impact on your business or could have some impact on your business. First suggestion is use and leverage your ResTech. And I always give a bit of a sideways look to my hosts on this one, because I want to emphasize here, we don't mean just to list on one, we mean push your partner, your ResTech partner, for insights. We did, and it's worked out amazing. And we have this really great research, and you should too. Like, they have access to all sorts of metrics, numbers, insights, and recommendations for you. Source market trends, booking volumes, average basket value. Use them. They're great partners, and their success is your success. GetYourGuide has view of your bookings on GetYourGuide. Connectivity has a wider view. So we always cheekily like to push our partners that do use a ResTech to really leverage them. Our second suggestion is to make sure your data is clean. And to be clean, your data needs to be complete. And what do I mean here? I mean, list everything that you can across as many channels as you can. Will they all work on every channel? Absolutely not. But the advantage of most of these digital channels that we all have access to today is that the barrier to entry, the barrier to trying that, is very low. So list all products across channels to get accurate insights of what is happening and what is working best on each channel. And the next suggestion is to reframe questions around OTAs with a wider and longer term context. So take this question, how do we ensure that OTAs don't eat into our direct bookings? And reframe that to be about how does working with OTAs impact the cost of our direct bookings? And if you start from here, you might change how you measure, collaborate, and prioritize internally. It's not a static playing field, it's dynamic. You will have to test and learn. But if you think about this, if you think about these levers of your cost of OTAs and truly what that is paying for, and your true cost of direct bookings and what that's paying for, it can lead to some interesting results. Which leads us to suggestion 4, which is to find the real cost of your direct bookings. And to do this well, you need an accurate representation of the cost, and this will fluctuate over time. It won't be the same for every experience. It won't be the same for every operator. But we often speak to different operators who choose not to or don't know to include the cost of things like website development, asset creation, credit card fees, translation costs. These are all things that are baked into an OTA cost, and that might be part of your day-to-day business running. The next suggestion is to measure the cost of bookings across all channels. So not just your sort of more nuanced view maybe of the cost of your direct bookings, and to measure these costs of bookings across all channels over time as well. At GetYourGuide, we do a lot of different types of marketing, a lot of different tools, a lot of different approaches, and we don't argue internally till the end of the day about which channel drove exactly what percentage of what booking. We look at the overall picture of how the different channels interact with each other and how much they drive overall to understand the overall picture of what works well together. And this might be true also of your business. So adopt a media mix modeling mentality. For example, do the cost of direct bookings decrease as you list on OTAs? If you campaign, measure how all channels react to that campaign. And it's really a long-term game. So testing and measuring over time across all the channels is key. Suggestion 6 is thinking about your audience groups and examining the pockets of those audience groups that you're potentially underserving. Your audience groups might look different, right? This is one approach. And depending on what kind of experiences your business runs, some of these groups might not even make sense at all. However, there is a lot of potential here to uncover areas of opportunity. For example, if you realize you're not serving corporate clients at all, it might be a chance to think about how you could adapt a product or the marketing of a product to appeal to that specific market. And an important point here too is that remember that different OTAs also have different audiences, right? If you feel you could be better serving different countries or subsegments, work with your OTA to address these, or like I said, test and learn with different channels to see what channel works with which of these segments best. Which brings me to my personal favorite child of these suggestions, honestly, which is creating products and materials that cater to these different audiences. So you'll see the images here are all of the same activity type. Activity types, the middle of that triple diamond. I know I want to be in Paris. I know I want to do a cruise on the Seine, but I don't know which one to do yet. But each of these photos that you'll see here actually talk to very different segments. And if you sort of have a look, you'll start to notice there's families in some, there's couples in some, there's sort of single travelers. And this is really important. So both in the content and in the actual real life lived experience, think about how you can adapt to your key target for each experience. So two different elements of this, I'd say, to call out, right, is there is the product side of this, making sure you have your product optimized to that audience, but there's also the marketing, imagery, description, listing side of this, where you need to ensure that if you're seeing, for example, GetYourGuide works really well for corporate travelers, just as a randomly generated example, then ensure that you have the best possible content for those travelers on that channel to double down on that strength. And in summary, in conclusion, there's a huge opportunity here. And that opportunity is that you can use OTAs to drive your direct growth and make your direct growth more efficient. We have some really compelling data here that tells us that OTAs don't cannibalize direct bookings, they amplify them. So our recommendation is to think like a marketer, make sure you have clean data, take a long-term view, explore which audience pockets you're underserving, and look for ways that you can use OTAs to target different audiences with the experiences and content that you have on those OTAs. I know I speak for Maya and Bókun as well when I say we want to help you do this. It's in all of our interests. So let's learn and grow and experiment together. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for, especially to Bókun for partnering with us on the research and for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you so much, Ollie. I think I speak for everyone on this call when I say that, so thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. The results of this study are so impressive. Can't imagine how confident our suppliers will feel after learning all these insights and the takeaways, which are super important. So thank you again for sharing this with us today.
My pleasure.
Awesome. So we have about 20 minutes left. So why don't we move into the fireside chat portion of the session? We do have a few questions for you.
Let's do it.
Perfect. All right. So the first one is more about the data that you just presented. So the data shows a significant growth of 41% with a more modest direct booking growth of 16%. So how did the study account for the natural expected growth of supplier businesses like over the course of a year, regardless if they joined an OTA?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a really fair question. And the way that we approach, so as soon as we saw the results come out, the exact same thing came up for us. And I think I mentioned it very briefly, probably too briefly earlier in the presentation. With this expected growth, this is something that we actually approach our partners to ask about. What are their expectations? And this is something that we saw in the arrival research that we mentioned. And we saw that expectation being around a healthy 10% as a goal. So maybe expectation is not even the right word, but the goal for 2024 will have been 10%. So we do feel pretty confident that even just isolating those direct bookings, 16% growth is a pretty compelling demonstration that adding an OTA isn't pulling that down, isn't slowing it down. And that is, of course, when you ignore the benefits of that additional revenue from OTA.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. All right. The second question that I have is, so the study that you just presented, it strongly supports using OTAs for overall business growth, as we know and support as well. But based on this data, how should our suppliers be thinking about sort of that optimal mix, or how should they be allocating their media budget between investing in high volume OTA channels, but also promote their direct booking channels as well?
I have a key word here for you, and that's really test.
Yeah.
There is no one size fits all here. I mean, I could give two very separate, I'm sure I could find two very separate examples within even the GetYourGuide world where everything I say for one would be completely untrue of the other. And I think that is really what the power of this research is. It's to tell supply partners not to be afraid that if you list on OTAs, you're going to open the floodgates and sort of break your business. It's really flipping that on its head and saying, try it.
Yeah.
Try it, be purposeful about how you try it, make sure you have that clean data, and then look at how different channels are interacting to see what works best for your business. So a little bit of a cop-out answer, maybe not to give you some direct numbers of what every supplier should do, but it really depends on that supplier's business. And again, that keyword I would say would be test, make a plan, be brave about where you're putting your experiences and that content. Think about those suggestions I mentioned. So things like what buckets you're serving,
Yeah.
things like how different channels are interacting with each other, and test and see what works because it will be different for every business.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, just to add on a little bit to that, and again, not a little pivoting a little bit away from the original question I asked, but something that we always want to, tell our suppliers is, again, maybe a bit of a cop-out answer, but use Bókun to its full advantage, right? There's so many amazing tools out like that we have with our website builder, booking widgets, offering discounts. There's so much you can do just within Bókun to really test different strategies as well. So that's something that we encourage as well.
I think that was suggestion number one was
Yeah,
leverage and
exactly.
push your ResTech partner.
Exactly.
So absolutely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, the next question I have might be a bit repetitive, but I think our suppliers would really appreciate it is so, you know, beyond kind of some of the tips you talked about or beyond maintaining that really strong review score, which we know is so important with Get Your Guide and other OTAs, what are your top maybe 2 or 3 actionable tips for suppliers to optimize their product listings on Get Your Guide, especially with the goal of maximizing visibility, conversions, and bookings?
Sure. I can give, in a moment, I'll give you a few tips that suppliers can do, I think, very quickly.
Yeah.
But what I will say first is if you're a Get Your Guide supplier, you have access to our Growth Hub. And the incredible gentleman that I sit next to at work, Pratik, he and his team look after this Growth Hub, and they do an awesome job of producing content that's like really clear, really actionable on, based on a lot of data that we don't, we don't put out publicly, but we can definitely get the insights and the actions that we know that suppliers should do and make them into actionable. Like there's videos, there's step-by-steps, there's checklists, all this sort of thing. So Get Your Guide Growth Hub is a great resource to understand the absolute best tips for optimizing your listing. The things that I would leave you with for today are really about thinking about your audience, understanding your competitive set. Those are the 2 big things. So when I say think about your audience, you're right, it's a little bit repetitive because I already said it was sort of my hobby horse favorite of the suggestions. But thinking about catering your product and marketing of that product to a particular group, and that group might be one of the segments that I mentioned, like corporate travelers or families, or it might be something really specific that makes sense for your business and the sort of subcategory you're in. But really looking at it from their perspective and then adapting the description, if you have an itinerary, the images that you have up there to appeal to that group. And specifically that first image on Get Your Guide is really key because that's what most people are seeing.
Yeah.
And within that, you're going to hear me say it again and again, test and test and test. And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm looking through, some other questions we've gotten, and someone did ask about attracting corporate clients. So would you suggest something similar if, that just made me think of that, maybe adjusting your photos or something else could be really a great way to test attracting, a specific target audience like corporate clients.
100%. So with attracting, I mean, these recommendations work for any particular group. You need to have a product fit of course, first, you need to have something that is going to work for corporate clients. So for corporate, for example, it's very clear you'll need a certain group size. That's an example. So just thinking from their perspective, how big could a team be? What kind of times might they need that? Experience to be at? And then on top of that, yeah, testing, honestly, is the big name of the game. And again, I want to highlight that like it might be that there's a product that you realize is like your corporate product, or it might be that you have a product that works for several segments and you realize that different segments work better through different channels. So you might see that after testing, corporate clients come to your website and book direct often. And so you optimize your content on your website to double down on that. Similarly, you might see that for your particular location and category and experience, you have lots of families coming through Get Your Guide. So you can experiment with that and double down on that.
Awesome. We have a bit more time, Ollie. There's maybe one or two other questions I would love to ask, if that's
Absolutely.
great. There's been some questions about AI, and so I was wondering if maybe, not really a direct question, but maybe if that's something you don't mind, maybe sharing a little bit more about how suppliers can leverage AI, how can they leverage AI within Get Your Guide as well, and if you have any other insights about kind of the futures of Get Your Guide with AI, I think that'd be really interesting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So to take the first part of your question first, we have already integrated AI content suggestions into our supplier portal. So when you're looking at descriptions, when you're even looking at what kind of images you have up there, you'll actually see in your supplier backend on Get Your Guide that there is a section that is recommendations. The AI has already gone through what you have on your listing and made suggestions. Is it perfect yet? Absolutely not. That's why it's not left to run amok. Use your common sense, do what works for your business, but they can often be really, really good recommendations. I mean, one of them, for example, is just as simple as, I don't even know if this one is an AI one, but as simple as like, make sure you have enough images. We recommend having like more than 7 images up. None of these things is going to be a 20% boost in your bookings, but all together they can make a really measurable difference. Overall for the business, I think as with anyone, I'm sure it's the same at Bókun, AI is changing the game. It's changing the game for us because, as I showed on that earlier slide, we work in this really complex media landscape, and that's really what we're here to offer you is like the understanding, the expertise, and playing the game in that landscape. What I can say to you so far is, in terms of bringing people to you, we are always testing the newest products and the newest sort of distribution channels that are out there to get people through Get Your Guide to you. And that includes the places and the channels that are working very, very quickly through how AI is changing the marketing landscape.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say. I'd say for AI, you've got some great tools already in the back end. And I can absolutely guarantee you that from a marketing perspective, this is what you can rely on us for. We have a lot of resources put towards understanding how AI influences how people book, and we have doing it on a scale that might not always be possible for individual operators.
Great, thank you very much. One other quick question, it's maybe something that we can always follow up with later in my follow-up email that everyone will be receiving, but is there a way for suppliers to maybe learn a bit more about other customer segments that I think there was that one slide that you talked through beyond explorers. Is there any other breakdown that we can maybe share with suppliers, just maybe help identify better product fit, add a bit more color to some of those groups that could be helpful as well?
Sure. So this question reflects what we often hear when we do our own events, which is you love hearing about what we know about our customers. And I can honestly say it's the opposite as well. When I get the privilege to talk to supply partners, like the best thing is talking about our customers, what they need, what they love, what annoys them, what they get angry about. Like I think this is all like our soul food. What I'll share with you, Maya, what we can share afterwards,
Yeah.
is the links to the previous steps, because they do focus, at least two of them actually do focus in different ways directly on our customers. So one of them is around reviews, and I believe one of them is genuinely diving into who these customers are and what their behavior is. And I think that'll probably be the juice that question is after.
Perfect. That's great. Awesome. So we'll follow up later then. That's perfect. All right. I think that's brings us to the end of the Q&A portion. I do have one other slide that I would love to share with the audience today. So I'm just going to pull that up. Here we go. So this is actually about our 5% commission savings discount that we have with GetYourGuide. So as Ollie mentioned, we are a connectivity partner with GetYourGuide. We're a premium connectivity partner, and so we're really happy to share this discount with our suppliers today. If you're not already connected to GetYourGuide, this is the great time to do that and save 5% on your commission rate for 6 months. It's very easy to get started. You can scan the QR code or go to the link. I will also be sharing this after, so don't worry if you can't do it right now. But the instructions you can just simply follow the instructions to register, add your products, and start earning.
There's someone somewhere trying to figure out how they scan this while watching this on their phone.
Yeah, so don't worry about that. We'll be following up later. It might be easier to do it on a desktop anyways. But yes, this is for those who are not already connected to GetYourGuide. If you are already selling with GetYourGuide, amazing. Ollie shared so many really important insights and takeaways today. So again, look out for the follow-up email and make sure that you are, adding the right images, uploading clean data, and everything else Ollie suggested. Also remember to add all your products to GetYourGuide as well to maximize your bookings. This really brings us to the end of our session. So thank you so much for attending today. We really appreciate you all taking your time, and Ollie, especially you as well. Again, look out for my follow-up email with a link to download the report. We'll share more about this great commission discount. We'll share the webinar recording as well. So don't worry if you've missed anything. And we'll answer some questions as well. There were some great ones that we weren't able to get to, so we'll make sure to answer those too. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Take care, everyone.